Welcome to the Super Fantasy Bros podcast, which is part of the Triple Play Fantasy Network. I am one half of the team, Kevin Coleman, and I am joined on my podcast by co-host Jacob Dunn, who is back after recently having a baby. How is that going?
Oh, it's going well, brother. I'm a dad times 2 now, which is unreal. My son, Jacob Thomas, was born last Tuesday. He weighed 7 pounds and 1 ounce and 19 and a half inches tall. He's eating like a champ. He's sleeping like a champ, which is allowing mom and dad to sleep like a champ, which is a wonderful change of pace from my firstborn, who did not let us sleep a wink. But hey, man, I'm glad to be back. I'm happy to be back on the show. Big shout out to D. Mendy for taking my spot last minute last week and absolutely crushing it with you, Kevin. I enjoyed the show.
Yeah, no, we're just glad everything was good. It came at, your son came at the wrong time, Jacob. He should have known that we had a show to do, but I understand.
Seriously.
I'm glad everybody's healthy. Hey, don't worry. That sleeping thing's not going to last very long. You know that. Like you enjoy it right now.
Knock on wood, man. I got to get my sleep. If you guys want quality content, pray that my son gets some sleep so that I can get some sleep, because Kevin has been carrying the content quality this whole time and I need to help.
Yeah, no, I feel you there. Trust me, my kids don't sleep either. But hey, here we go. On today's show, we had David Phil on last week. Luckily, we have the smarter Jacob here this week. So we're covering our top 5 wide receivers heading into the 2021 season. We're going to be telling you which wide receivers we're not going to draft based on ADP and based on just kind of in general, like guys we're going to avoid in both redraft and dynasty formats. And we're going to be going over some of my favorite dynasty buys at the end of the show. So let's get it going. Now, before we get into the main kind of content that we want to go over, we always try to start off with some news, and there isn't a ton of news right now. It's dry out here, and as you can tell by fantasy Twitter today. But if you want to know, like, what do you think, Jacob, about the Aaron Rodgers situation? It's July now. He just had a golf match where he's been kind of snide about it. What are we getting concerned now about these guys? Adams, all these different groups, the Packers, Jordan Love, could he be consistent? Like, where are you at with Aaron Rodgers right now?
It gets a little bit concerning the more we go into the offseason, but my gut says that he's going to stay. I mean, he has been in Green Bay for his entire 16-year career. And I know there's a ton of rumors saying that, he's going to get traded to the Broncos. But if he gets traded to the Broncos, then the Broncos will have to give up a litany of assets, like, future first-round draft picks, and most likely Jerry Jeudy, maybe even Noah Fant or Sutton, which, I mean, if Rodgers comes here, he's not going to have much of a team to work with. So I'm not sure that Rodgers would want a trade unless it's just for picks so that he can just land in Denver and just, a la when Peyton Manning came here, he just got to inherit the whole team without giving anything up. That would be ideal if Rodgers was traded. But all in all, I think that Aaron Rodgers stays. Now, if he does miss all of training camp, I think that would be more telling, and I think that will force Green Bay's hand. But Aaron Rodgers is a very interesting dude. I can see him retiring before, re-signing with the Packers if he feels even a bit disrespected.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, when you look at his contract, really, like, he has a $37 million cap hit this year and a $38 million dead money. Trading, I just don't see trading in the right. Like, they have an out in 2022. So, like, right. I don't think he's there after this year. I just don't see him leaving. So I'm not really that concerned. But like you said, training camp, what do we see? Is he coming? I think he's going to inevitably play because I don't think there's really anywhere else he can play. But like you said, I really think he either plays or he retires. Right. Like, that's how crazy this is.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where we have. But let's get into our top 5 wide receivers. So we are going to go into our redraft because Jacob's the man of redraft. And we're going to be talking about our top 5 for redraft. And then we'll be getting into some dynasty. So let's go to your redraft.
All right, my man. Yeah. So Tyreek Hill, he leads my list of the wide receiver ones, of all of my wideouts. I do have Devontae Adams as my number 1 right now, but with all of like this Aaron Rodgers stuff, I'm just, for argument's sake, I'm going to leave him out. So I'm going to bump everyone up 1, and that's Tyreek Hill. Kevin, I have openly admitted to be a little bit of a heightist when it comes to my wide receivers. I want them tall. I want them big. I want my wide receiver ones to be those alpha dogs who are like 6'4" or higher. But Tyreek Hill is on another level. He is a unicorn. Like over Hill's last 3 seasons, he's averaging 8.4 targets per game. 8.4. That type of consistency over a stretch of 43 games the past 3 seasons is way too consistent to ignore. His floor and ceiling is unmatched among all wideouts in the league. Plus, the Chiefs have no legitimate wide receiver 2 besides their world-class tight end Travis Kelce. But even Kelsey's dominant presence down the middle of the field helps stretch the sidelines for Hill. So if you are even a little slightly heightist like me, don't be deterred from taking Hill as one of your first wideouts, especially if Aaron Rodgers doesn't return to Green Bay, making Adams the wide receiver 1.
Yeah, so there's a couple things I want to point out, and I want to talk to you about it. One is, so let's go to Hill first. Like, I do think when you look at his targets and his target share and everything he's done, I think consistently, like, you pair him with Mahomes, he is that. So, like, I understand that. And I when I wrote my article last year with it, like, when you see what he's been able to put up, the amount of just targets that he's gotten, it's just been phenomenal. Like, when you look at most yards on deep passes for 20 yards downfield until last year was 754, so 41 targets. Like, he's got most yards on deep passes. He's got all those things that you like to look for in a wide receiver 1, especially Mahomes. I like that you brought up the good point. Like, right now I've been seeing a lot of Mecole Hardman. Have you been noticing that? And I've been seeing some ADP get bumped up. Please stay away from Mecole Hardman. Like, don't do it.
I agree completely. He hasn't proved it yet, and Watkins has been there wide receiver 2, and he's been oft injured, but they needed Watkins to come back because Hardman just is not their wide receiver 2. Kelce is their true wide receiver 2, and then it's probably Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be their wide receiver 3. They just cannot count on Mecole and Robinson and Pringle. Like, all these guys are just guys.
Yeah, and they're not worth the ADP. I mean, you might best ball. I don't mind grabbing them, maybe. But no, in terms of trying to, like, figure out when the hell they're going to catch a ball, like, that to me, I'm staying away from. Now, Davante Adams is a different one. So I've saw 2 different takes today. That's why I'm glad you brought it up. Some said that he's QB. He's not QB dependent. Like, you don't need Aaron. He can go in there with anybody and still be there. I question that a little bit. I think that he can still be a wide receiver 1, but he's not going to be a top 5. Is that kind of how you would feel? Or where would you rank him? Like, let's say Rodgers wasn't there. Let's say Love is his quarterback. Where would you be comfortable ranking him?
I just don't see a Davante Adams that quarterback proof like the next guy I'm going to talk about, a DeAndre Hopkins. I don't see him being that proof. Like, he needs that quarterback. Like, Aaron Rodgers was force feeding Adams the ball on the goal line, much to the detriment of Aaron Jones. Everyone who managed Aaron Jones was like, oh my gosh, this is maddening. But Adams was getting force fed. And I'm not sure that Jordan Love has that talent to force feed Adams. So I would be hard pressed to put Davante Adams, like, probably, I would debate my top 10, but he would probably be my top 10 because he does have unreal talent. I just don't think he has that talent to be quarterback proof.
Yeah, he had 149 targets last year in 14 games, so he was getting just peppered. So again, that's what you have to kind of worry about with that. But all right, let's move on for your number 2. You kind of mentioned him already, DeAndre Hopkins. Yep. What do you think of DeAndre?
DeAndre Hopkins is the most talented wideout in the game today, bar none. I just wanted to start that off. He is incredible. He is one of the most quarterback proof wide receivers this game has ever seen. Even at 29 years old, this is the guy that every team badly wants because his catch radius is insane. Now, let's dive into the last 3 seasons. Hopkins had 473 total targets over his last 3 seasons, which averages out to be 157.7 targets per year, which averages out to be 10.1 targets per game. That is insane. That's almost 2 full targets more than Tyreek Hill has averaged over the past 3 seasons. The only reason I don't have Hopkins as my wide receiver 1 is due to Hill's insane ceiling and his speed, and he can score on any single play. I love that upside. But getting back to Hopkins, DeAndre is going into his second season with the best quarterback he's ever played with, Kyler Murray. In his first season on a team with Kyler Murray, Hopkins had over 1,400 yards and 9 touchdowns. So I think sky is the limit for this duo. And DeAndre's outlook only strengthens with the rookie draft pick, Rondale Moore, Christian Kirk, and yes, even AJ Green, Kevin. Yeah. He can take some attention away from him. But I am extremely tempted to make Hopkins my number 1 wideout, but for now, he's my number 2.
No, I think that's fair. I think Rondale Moore is a good addition. I can't say Andy Isabella or Christian Kirk, but I will say, right, Rondale Moore. I think Rondale Moore is going to be a nice addition for all of them in that offense, and I think that's a good thing for what they're going to do there. I do struggle with Kingsbury's offense. Like I worry about that a little bit, but like you said, you can't really worry about Hopkins. He's an absolute stud, and when you look at what he's able to do, the targets that he's going to get in the red zone. I do like that, and I think that's fair. And they really didn't bring any other weapons. They got Rondale, but they didn't they brought in AJ. But again, I don't see them. Larry was probably more of a target share, and he got more targets than probably those guys did last year with what he's been able to do. So, I like Hopkins. I like that there. I probably would have flipped maybe your 2 and 3, but who is your number 3?
So my number 3 is Stephon Diggs, which I actually had as my number 2 wideout all summer. But then the more research I did and just the consistency of DeAndre Hopkins just had him vaulted over Diggs. But hey, Stephon Diggs is probably the safest wide receiver that you can take early in your draft. We all knew that Diggs was a solid wideout in Minnesota, but he single-handedly vaulted Josh Allen's career. He had 127 catches for over 1,500 yards and 9 touchdowns in his first year with a new team, with a quarterback who came into that year with serious accuracy issues. Allen clung on to him from the get-go and gave Diggs 9.6 targets per game. With Allen ascending as one of the league's top quarterbacks, Diggs is firmly entrenched as his top target, which should be fantasy managers' top targets on draft day.
Yeah. No, I like that. I mean, when we look at Buffalo, they're not going to run the ball with Singletary and Moss. That's kind of they're going to throw the ball a lot. You're going to have Allen there. They brought in Emmanuel Sanders. Does that worry you? That doesn't really worry me as much.
It doesn't worry me a ton, but Sanders is a very reliable vet. But, I don't see him getting more than 4 catches per game.
Okay. No, that's fair. I do think Cole Beasley, vaccines aside, he's a legit, he's a legit player, and he's going to get those targets, and he's a value right now. His value ever since he came out and said what he said is dropped. Yeah. And if we're looking at this, we talked about this, this is fantasy. You don't draft based on feelings. This guy's going to be a legit redraft guy. And I've seen him go anywhere from I think I got him in the Scott Fishbowl at the 15th round or 16th round.
Let's go.
So that's a legit guy in offense in a redraft area. I'll target Cole Beasley.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I like Diggs' outlook, but there is a possibility that we have already seen Stephon Diggs' best season of his career. So, I see a little bit of regression happening, but I would still take him as my wide receiver 3.
Okay. No, that's fair. All right, let's go to the next guy that I left off my list because, we'll probably talk about that. But who do you have as your number 4?
All right, I got Sir Calvin Ridley, breakout year incoming. Last season, he turned 143 targets into 90 catches, over 1,300 yards, and 9 touchdowns. And that was even with Julio as Atlanta's wide receiver 1. I know that Julio did miss some games with all of those hamstring issues, but Ridley still established himself as the wide receiver 1 in those games where Julio was not there. So Ridley has proven to be, a wide receiver one alpha dog. He doesn't need a stud on the other side, like taking extra coverage away. He has proven to be that guy. So I think that, Ridley is going to soak up all those targets that Julio is leaving behind. Of course, Russell Gage and, correct me if I'm saying his name wrong, but Alamadeus Zacchaeus, they are going to get some of those targets. But Julio Jones eclipsed 143 targets in all but one of the previous 6 seasons. So you can expect Ridley to garner 150 plus targets on a very pass-heavy offense. So Ridley is firmly entrenched as my wide receiver 4, and I can't wait to see his breakout.
Yeah, no, I think that he's a very solid option. It's funny because Dynasty perspective, we always talk about like how old they are. He's an older receiver for like where he's at in his career because he came into the league older. Like he just kind of
right? Or 27.
Yeah. He's 27. I do believe he's turning 27 pretty soon. But but it was just for everybody listening and just to understand, like I looked up his stats without Julio Jones and the games that he's played in his career. So 2019 all the way to 2021. The lowest number of targets he received was 9. And so he had 10, 13, 10, 9, 12, 14, 9, 12 targets. And then when you look at his yards, he went over 100 yards in 5 of those games and had 90 in 2 of those games. And so the one thing that he did struggle with was touchdowns. He only had 3. But I think with Julio that he struggled with that as well. And I think that was more of the Falcons offense. They really struggled scoring in the red zone. But no, I agree. I think he's going to get peppered with targets. And I know my guy Peter Howard out there is saying vacated targets isn't a thing, but he's going to earn those targets. Yeah. Calvin's going to get a lot. I mean, they're going to get peppered. That defense is bad. They're going to have game script for the throw from behind. Like, there's a lot of things to like about Calvin Ridley. You could honestly say maybe Calvin should be number 3, realistically over Diggs, or even a little higher, just based on what he's going to get his share, his volume there. All right, who do you have at number 5?
All right, number 5, I got DK Metcalf. So I was admittedly a little low on him after the season ended last year due to a disappointing second half. In the first half, he was putting up an otherworldly 788 yards and 8 touchdowns through 8 games. And then the last 8 games, it was just 515 yards and only 2 touchdowns. And the talk of the town in Seattle is that Pete Carroll wants to run the ball more, which would lead to less cooking from Russ, right?
Yeah.
Look, Russ is going to cook no matter what the rumor in Seattle is. The Seahawks defense is decent, but they're not the Legion of Boom anymore. They're going to give up points, and Russell is going to have to throw downfield. DK Metcalf at 6'4", 235 pounds, absolutely jacked, and can run a 4.3 40. He can get behind any defense. As long as the Seattle offensive line can give Russ enough time, he's going to heave it to Metcalf multiple times, which will eventually lead to huge games. I see 140 plus targets for 1,400 plus yards and at least 10 touchdowns. And his ADP right now is at 301, which, Metcalf could potentially be drafted by a CMC or a Dalvin Cook manager who have the first or second pick, which would be extremely ideal. Starting out your draft with CMC or Cook, and then at the turn taking a Metcalf and another RB2 or another wide receiver 1 would be sensational.
Yeah, no, there's a couple of people that I'm concerned that they're not in your top 5. We'll get into that because there's one that you put him as could sneak in your top 5, and it's but I'm a Cowboys fan, so it's hard for me. I'm very biased. I like DK. I think the thing that I worry about is just I don't trust that offense. Like I know what you're saying, and I like that you're like, hey, they let him cook, do these type of things. Mm-hmm. I just worry about that. I think Lockett's a very sneaky. I think Lockett's that guy's going to always exceed ADP no matter what. Like he's that. And I have Lockett, and he is frustrated because he'll have those games where he has 1 catch for 7 yards. Mm-hmm. But when you watch him, he's very consistent. So I do think they'll take away the targets there. But they didn't really upgrade that position, and I still think the running back position's a little weak. If Carson gets hurt, and he has gotten hurt, you're going to see them throw it more. So I like it. I love DK. DK is in my top 5 for Dynasty wide receivers as well. Who do you think could sneak into the top 5? You got a couple guys?
I absolutely do, man. And despite having AJ Brown and Keenan Allen next up on my rankings after my top five, I'm going with the upside of Terry, Scary Terry McLaurin, and your boy CD Lamb. Okay, so I'm going to start off with Scary Terry. He finished as the wide receiver 24 and wide receiver 25 in his first 2 years, despite mediocre quarterback play at best. I think that Ryan Fitzpatrick is a significant upgrade over Dwayne Haskins, Case Keenum, Colt McCoy, Alex Smith, Kyle Allen. I mean, he has been the very definition of quarterback proof. Even though he's finishing as a wide receiver 2, he could easily finish as a wide receiver 1 or even higher with a quarterback who loves to sling the ball. Now, I have heard the argument that Washington football team, since they do have an incredible defense, that Fitzpatrick will be like a game manager, but I just don't see that happening. I mean, like, the Redskins still have to put up points, and they have to go to their number one guy, Terry, who is just a burner, and he is just a freak. So I can absolutely see him sneaking into the top 5. Right now, he's my wide receiver 9, but he could easily sneak into the top 5. And then now my second guy, your boy Kevin, CD Lamb. Let's go. I am so hyped for Lamb this season. It's unreal. We talked about him on an earlier show, but I'll keep singing his praises whenever and wherever I can. So Lamb finished the 2020 season, his rookie season, as the wide receiver 20, despite losing Dak in week 5. CD was averaging 7.3 targets in all his games with Dak as a rookie. Lamb, like all the other rookies, had to deal with that wonky COVID-ridden offseason too, yet he was still being peppered with targets often from Dak. So with Dak and Lamb having a full offseason together, I see both those guys putting up video game numbers together, especially with the Cowboys defense giving up 29.6 points per game. So I don't expect Dak to run a ton coming off that ankle injury, which will most likely mean a lot more screens for CD.
No, I'm going to talk about CD. So I think you're right. I think those points are good there. I like Scary Terry. I have him on my anyway, and I can sneak in the top 5 for Dynasty. Like, I realistically, as much as I like CD and as much as I like the NFC East, what they have, Galladay, everybody there, we could be talking about Scary Terry being the wide receiver 1 in the NFC East before the end of the season. Like, we realistically, he had poor quarterback play, had all those things going on with him, and then now Ryan Fitzpatrick isn't, Tom Brady, but he's going to pepper him, and you're going to see those targets, you're going to have him there. So, no, I agree. I think those guys are good. So just to recap for everybody listening, we have Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins, Stephon Diggs, Calvin Ridley, DK Metcalf. God, I can't talk. And then we have Terry McLaurin and then CD Lamb. So those are your guys that can maybe sneak in there, and then those are your top 5 guys that are there. Now we're going to go to my Dynasty, and we're going to be looking at Dynasty. And as always, I always like to say, like, when I go to Dynasty, it's based on value. I'm all about value.
Right.
So everybody don't be yelling at me on social media or come finding me at the podcast. Like, there's consistency issues that I have sometimes with guys. And there's also, like, I'm not an ageist, but I am, like, in a way. So I just want to point that out. So let's go to Dynasty. All right, so I'll go first, and then I'll probably have Jacob lead me through. But my number 1 Dynasty wide receiver, and it's someone who I absolutely love. I've been on him this whole time, and that's AJ Brown. And he was my Dynasty wide receiver 1 in January. So everybody should know that he's been up there for me. I'm on record. You can find me. You can take the receipts down. Right now his ADP is 18.50 and wide receiver 2 right now, like behind Justin Jefferson. But when you look at what he's been able to accomplish in Tennessee, he's just a stud, and he's shown that he hasn't regressed, and he's not been one of those guys like, oh man, location is going to hurt him. He hasn't done that. He was supposed to finish, I think, with what the targets that he saw last year, where he saw him on the field. I think he was supposed to finish like number 30 wide receiver just based on the targets. So when you look at like the perspective where he at, and he actually finished as number 12 wide receiver. So when you're looking at where you're projected based on what he had, and he had that injury that he was dealing with.
Right.
So, and I don't think he was as healthy as people thought last year. I think that he actually, as we saw after the season, he had to have knee surgery. So he definitely had that, but he was consistent as hell. And when you watch him, he was putting up 20-point games. He had that last game of the year against Houston. He had 31 fantasy points per game in PPR formats. He's young. He's explosive. He's 24. You're going to get like probably at least 3 years of top end production from him. I love Tannehill in that offense. I understand the Julio thing, but losing Jonnu Smith, I don't think Julio's is. I like Julio, but I don't think Julio is going to be that guy that comes in and just takes things away from him. I'm more worried about the rushing attack. But with Arthur Smith not being there anymore, we could see them throw a little bit more and be a little bit more dynamic on that side and give them some reins. So I do like that. I do like that kind of game script for them. So AJ Brown's my dynasty wide receiver 1 based on value, talent, where he's at, what he's been able to accomplish, his consistency. You're probably looking at 20 fantasy points per game consistently with him. He's going to get catches. I think they're going to target him more. And I think Julio helps him too, because I think teams are going to have to worry about Julio now instead of worrying about Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith, these other guys that have kind of been there that haven't had to put that much pressure on the defense. They're still going to have to worry about Julio. So AJ Brown is my dynasty wide receiver 1. Do you think I'm crazy with that?
You are not crazy at all, because I had AJ Brown as my wide receiver 2 before Julio came in, and I slipped him down to my wide receiver 6 for redraft. But in a dynasty, he's only 24 years old. He is an absolute beast. And I like all those points that you made. And Julio almost missed half the season last year. So I think, to AJ Brown, he's coming off these knee surgeries, but it was just like some cleanup surgeries and stuff. And he says that he is going to be good to go this year. And what's crazy is that he is built like a running back. Like, he is jacked. He's only like 6 foot tall, but he plays like he's 6'8". Like, this dude is everywhere. He's always open. He knows how to get open. So I love that pick. And he's only 24, which is incredible for dynasty.
And he's a top social media Twitter follow. Like, he's my guy. Like, you gotta have him. You gotta have entertainment. Like, this dude just is my dude. Like, when I watch him and I love him, and I'm not even really, I was a big fan of him coming out of college, but I'm not like a fan of his. But I just love his way he plays. Everything's there. Yeah. So that's my guy. So I'm sticking with him.
Single-handedly, he used Twitter and TikTok to bring Julio into town. So I mean, he is a beast behind the keys.
No, he's my guy. So I'm going with him, and I think just based on value too. Like, he's going where he's at as wide receiver 2 with what you could give up for him, and that's always the case. Okay, what can I move him for, and what can I have this for? So I'm 100% on that. My number 2 might be interesting, and there's a. If we just talked about Tyreek Hill, so my number 2 is Tyreek Hill. Now, we talk about ageism, and he's 27. Jacob did a good job with all the stats that we kind of talked about. Now, in 2020, he saw 10-plus targets in 7 different games. Kelsey's going to be 32. Sammy's gone. McColl's there, but, I mean, they didn't really bring in anybody worthy of that kind of spot. So I don't think the targets are going away. If anything, I know this is crazy to think, but I think he might get more. Right. Like, I think he's going to get realistically, so last season he saw 135 targets. What happens this season if he gets to 150? I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility, to be honest, with what he does. And he has his rushing. He does get those sweeps in the red zone that they like to use him with. They love doing those type of different gadget plays in the red zone. So he's going to get rushing touchdowns as well. I mean, last year he had 2, but he does get in the red zone there. So he's big playability all over the place. And he had 328 fantasy points last year. So the one thing I would say with Tyreek, though, is that I'm probably moving him if I'm not a contender this year. So I don't think he'll be in the top 5 dynasty wide receivers next year. So he has a value cliff. And so I think you definitely need to be worried about his value cliff. So when I look at my rosters, I have Tyreek everywhere. The rosters that I feel like, I don't know if I'm necessarily competing in that league, or if I'm borderline, I'm waiting to see, because I will move Tyreek. Now, just to put on perspective of what he's getting moved for right now in Superflex leagues, he actually got traded straight up for Justin Herbert. So you could take Tyreek, get a quarterback like Justin Herbert in Superflex leagues. That is a smash.
I take that all day.
Yeah, and I don't know how they got that, but they did. And so to me, that's pretty good perspective. But hey, you got that. He also went straight up for DK Metcalf. So again, and then he also went for Justin Jefferson and a 3rd-round pick. Okay. So I think that's very good value. Like, if you can get, though, younger with that perceived production, I'm okay with that. But I still think he's your wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 1 in formats like this. Like, you're going to want to win. Like, Tyreek's going to give you that ability. But I do think he's at his value cliff. Like, this is it. So I have him as my dynasty wide receiver 2, but that's because I know I'm going to move. If I need to, I'll move him. I'll move him around, do those type of things.
I couldn't agree more, my man.
So I just talked about him. So Tyreek is my number 2, and then DK Metcalf is my number 3 in Dynasty formats. And, Jacob definitely mentioned him and went over it. The thing that I did want to mention, though, is that he finished as wide receiver 2 or better in 50% of his games last year, which ranked about 13th among wide receivers. So he's consistent, and he was much better in year 2 than he was in year 1. So one thing you saw from his year 1 to his year 2 was consistency improved. He finished as wide receiver 7.5 PPR. And then he also is tied to Russell Wilson. So there's a lot of things going for him. He's young. He's efficient. He's only 23, which is crazy to think about. Right. He looks like I'm not me. Like, let's just be honest.
He looks like this guy, linebacker. Like, oh my gosh, he's insanely jacked.
He's insane. He did strike out in the celebrity softball game last night. So I thought about maybe moving him down my tiers.
I will hold that against him, but that is a little embarrassing, DK. Come on.
Struck out in a softball game. But no, when you're looking at what he was able to do, I mean, he's a big play threat. He's going to get targets. He had 129 last year. Points per game were there. Like, again, value. So for me, that value is there if you can add something to him. So if you can get Tyreek, trade him for DK plus, I like that. I like what you can do. I did this last year in a Dynasty League. I was not contending at the end. So I was borderline. I got knocked out of the playoffs the last week. I traded Devontae Adams for DK and a second-round pick.
Okay. Yeah.
So, value, right? It's all about value. Those trades are interesting. Like, I don't know who I'd rather have in a Dynasty League, to be honest. Devontae Adams or DK. DK's younger. Devontae,
Right. Right. Especially now with Aaron Rodgers, you could not pull off that deal right now. That would be impossible. So you moved him at the right time to get DK.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what Dynasty is, right? Moving him at the right time and getting lucky at the right time, sometimes getting out of those things. And then, in that same league, I traded Devontae Parker for Ayuk, and that was like 3 weeks before the season. So,
Great call.
It was over. So those are the type of things you got to try to move around and do some things there. Now, my number 4 is Justin Jefferson, and that might be a little lower than some. He's getting drafted actually right now as wide receiver 1. I don't have him as wide receiver 1 yet. So he's getting drafted at 17, basically in the middle of the second as wide receiver 1. I've seen him go as early as the 112 in Dynasty drafts and startups. And that's, man, I just don't know. So when you look at Justin Jefferson, what he did last year, we know just how difficult he did. He finished with 1,400 yards, 125 targets, and that's kind of ridiculous. And he caught 70% of his targets last year.
Crazy.
So basically 16 yards a catch or target, excuse me. So no other wide receiver in history of the game has totaled that many yards on less targets. So when you're looking at what he did, I think consistently, Adam Thielen is there, and they do have good chemistry between him and Cousins. They didn't really add anything else. I think their defense is going to be a little bit better this year, though. They added Daniel Hunter. They did a lot of things on that defensive side of the ball. They're going to run it. We know that with Dalvin Cook. They're going to have that game script, but I don't think they're going to have to throw. Like when you watch the games last year for the Vikings, it was basically that third, fourth quarter in the second half. They're just hucking it, and they're just trying to get back in those games. And Jefferson definitely, had a run there at the end. You saw it last year. He had 12 targets in week 13, 8, 11, 10, 12. That's kind of how he finished his year off. He also had 13 in week 12. So he got peppered with targets. Will those targets still be there? I still think he finishes as a top 5 wide receiver. So don't get me wrong. Like, he's in there. But I think his perceived value right now is too much. So, like, I actually wrote a column recently for the Dynasty Rewind group for their Patron. And I said that actually this might be a time to actually trade Justin Jefferson. Because I think his value is so much higher than what his actual worth is. And I looked at it, and it depending on what you think of different guys. Like, you can trade Justin Jefferson for CeeDee Lamb plus. So, like, Justin Jefferson got traded for CeeDee Lamb and Cole Kmet.
Nice. I like that a lot. And plus, from a dynasty perspective, how long is Kirk Cousins going to be in Minnesota?
Yeah.
And, and the Vikings didn't draft Justin Fields, who they were trying to get. So they settled for Kellen Mond. And it's like, is he the future? Will he be able to sustain Justin Jefferson's dynasty value after Kirk Cousins is gone? I mean, what do you think about that, Kevin?
Well, that's my biggest argument. So my number 5 is CeeDee Lamb, and I have them really close. I really feel like it's 4 and 5, like they're right across the board. But my biggest argument for why I would rather take CeeDee Lamb where he's going as ADP, which is wide receiver 7, is because he's going to have Dak, and he's going to have Dak for the next 5-6 years. Where, like you mentioned, everybody out there listening, Kellen Mond is not the answer. Like, you can write that down on my gravestone. Stop wasting third-round picks on him. Like, he is a nice athlete. He was a okay college quarterback, super nice kid, like everything about him. He does not have the accuracy or decision-making to make it in the NFL. He just doesn't. And so that's not going to be the option, and he's not going to be there. So you're looking at what, Kirk Cousins for this year. Right. If they don't do well again, they're probably going to move on from Kirk Cousins, and they're going to say, so now you're like, okay, who's Justin Jefferson got throwing in the ball? Okay, well now, hey, look at CD, who's going to have Dak, and I think Amari Cooper's going after next year. Right. So that's kind of my perspective from a dynasty perspective. If you can have Justin Jefferson and trade him for CD, I think that would be a great move, plus adding something. But like you mentioned with CD, like everything about him is just there. I think they move him in the slot a little bit more, which he excelled at. Yeah. And then last year with Dak in the 5-game sample size, which I know all my analytic guys will be mad at me because it's too small of a sample, he was still wide receiver 12 with Dak. So if he would have finished that season out, and that's with what he was dealing with, the new season, COVID, all that kind of stuff, I don't see how there's any way CD doesn't finish as a top 10 wide receiver. I just don't see it. As long as he stays healthy. I don't see as either one of those guys do. He's my most wanted asset in dynasty leagues right now, is CD Lamb.
I could not agree more, and you are convincing me. By the second, I drafted Justin Jefferson in a startup dynasty league, and I've been trying to get Lamb to pair with Jefferson, but it feels like I need to give up Jefferson to get Lamb, but I think I would rather have Lamb.
Yeah. I mean, you can't go wrong with either, but just if you dynasty outlook, looking at it, like you're still going to get pretty good production. I mean, Jefferson might finish ahead of CD this year. Like maybe we're going to see, because Cooper being there and Gallup and those different groups. So maybe, but I still think CD is the wide receiver 1 in Dallas this year. So you're still, let's say you do trade him for CD, you could still get something back, plus CD, get that production that you would like to see, maybe a top 10 production. You can still win your league with that. Plus you get another asset. So that's kind of how I am. I don't fall in love with my assets on my team. Like, you got to be very careful. Like, I like guys. Like, I love Swift. But if someone offered me something for Swift, and I'm like, yeah, I'll take that. Like, there's no, like, I'm not going to take something to try to better my team. I'll be quick on this. There's a couple guys that I think could sneak into the top 5 for dynasty conversations. I put Calvin Ridley down just based on what you were saying. He can see the targets. He's going to vault up, so his value is going to increase. I really believe that Calvin Ridley could sneak into that top 5. And then Scary Terry for me. I think that he could put up those numbers that you like to see. He's still a younger asset. He could still have 3 years of legit talent on that team. He's going right now as wide receiver 16. So that's incredible value in dynasty startups. Wow. Yeah, and basically he's going to round 4.5, 5 in that range. So 4-5 range. In a startup I did, I got CD and Terry. So I got them both.
I love it.
So love the third, fourth. Yeah. So the third, fourth, I grabbed them both to pair with Swift and Herbert. So that's how I kind of grabbed it and said, hey, I'm going to go young, build up. So I think Terry McLaurin could, by the end of this thing, be a asset that we like to see from the dynasty perspective. But no, just for everybody listening, my top 5 are Brown, Hill, Metcalf, Jefferson, and Lamb. And those are my 2 outside guys.
Love it.
So what we're going to do now is go to some wide receivers that we're kind of staying away from. I love that he has one of these guys on here. So, Jacob, why don't you give me one, then I'll do mine, and we'll kind of go back and forth. So give me one wide receiver you're staying away from.
Okay, so one wide receiver I'm staying away from in redraft. We just talked about him. Justin Jefferson. He's going at the 212, which is too rich for my blood. And I'm not going to keep beating the dead horse because you've done a great job in why he shouldn't be trusted as the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. You know, I've talked about Jefferson at length on a previous episode. I can't get behind that high 212 draft pick where he's my wide receiver 1. You know, the Minnesota defense, like you said, is getting healthier with Hunter, with Anthony Barr coming back. So I don't believe that Cousins will have to huck the ball at an insane pace like he did last season. I still think that Jefferson will be great. Like you said, he should finish within the top 5 at least because he's going to get peppered with targets. He is an insane talent. But I have a difficult time trusting him as my wide receiver 1. I would rather have guys that are going right after him like DK Metcalf or even a solid wide receiver 1 floor guy like Keenan Allen. I would heavily debate between Jefferson and Allen because I know I'm getting that production from Allen with a rock solid up and coming quarterback in Justin Herbert, I trust Keenan Allen at least next season over Justin Jefferson this season.
No. I think that's fair. Redraft is so weird for me because I'm not in a lot of those. But I think I would be more concerned. And to be honest, like in my redraft leagues that I've kind of done, the charity leagues that I've done, I've just punted wide receiver. Like I'm not even touching it to like the fourth round or fifth round. If it's super flex, like if it's not super flex, then obviously that changes things. If it's third, fourth, but I'm punting it because you can get guys like those guys that you mentioned later and still get a better running back. And I think that's the key there. One guy for me that I'm just staying away from, Jaga, is OBJ. Odell Beckham, you have ruined my life for the last 2 years because I've been on your side. I do think that like where his ADP is right now, which is wide receiver 32 and 93.00, it's actually not a terrible ADP because realistically you could be probably, if he has a pretty good year, you could see him as wide receiver 2. And so he's going to exceed his he's going to exceed his ADP probably, but I don't want to do it. I'm done with you, OBJ. In Dynasty formats as well, like to get every perspective who's going around him, Noah Fant is right there, Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Waddle, Tyler Lockett, DJ Chark, Laviska, Debo Samuel. I just, from a Dynasty perspective, I'd rather grab kind of the higher upside guy and hope that he pans out to be something for me for 3 or 4 years down the road. I'm just not taking a shot at OBJ. I can see OBJ being like AJ Green was last year. Remember how everybody was drafting AJ Green, and then he just, boom, his value's done. You can't even get rid of AJ Green.
Right. Yeah, you won't hear any arguments from me. I will never draft OBJ again. I am not drinking that Kool-Aid. I'm never falling for it again. See you later, OBJ.
It's just not worth it. I just don't think it's in Stefanski's offense where he's going to run the ball, have the run script. They have Chubb, Hunt there. They have Landry there. They don't have enough targets. They just don't have enough targets. And so and he can't stay healthy, and he's an idiot. All right, let's move on. Who is your second wide receiver you're staying away from?
Okay, so the second wideout in redrafts I'm staying away from is Jamar Chase. I can pretty much guarantee you I won't have Chase on any of my redraft rosters this fall. That's not to say that I don't believe in him long term, but it seems that most fantasy managers are banking on Chase duplicating the rookie season that Justin Jefferson just had. And like you said, it was an historic rookie season that it doesn't happen every year. Justin Jefferson is an outlier. Okay. This is a whole new year. I still think that Burrow's connection with Chase will translate to the next level, but he's being taken at the 601 before guys like Kenny Golladay, Chase Claypool, teammate T. Higgins, who I would actually rather have than Chase because Higgins has proven it and he already has that chemistry with Burrow at the next level. And even Cortland Sutton, I would take over Chase, who's going a full round later at the 702. I'll take any one of those proven wideouts before taking a shot on rookie Jamar Chase.
Do you think Sutton's injury though does that worry you at all? Or you think he's good? He's ready to roll over Chase? Because Chase, I feel like Chase has the better quarterback, right? I don't want to shit on your Broncos, but I feel like Chase got the better quarterback option to where I think I would risk it more with Chase, if that makes sense.
So Chase does have the better quarterback, but let's not forget that Burrow's coming out of that incredible knee injury that, I mean, his knee was shattered. And there is arguments on if Burrow is going to be ready for week 1. So is he going to be as effective for at least the first two or 3 weeks? I'm not sure. Whereas Cortland Sutton has proven to be quarterback proof. He's not on the quarterback proof level of a DeAndre Hopkins, like I was saying earlier, but Sutton has proven to get it done with the likes of Brandon Allen, Case Keenum, Joe Flacco, all these other garbage quarterbacks, So whether it's Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater, I still think that Sutton is somewhat quarterback proof, and I would trust him who has proven it over Chase, who hasn't proven it yet at the pro level. And I would even like Sutton more if Teddy Bridgewater won, because I know that Bridgewater is accurate, even though he's not going to be as gunslingy as Drew Lock would be. But, If Teddy wins the job outright, then Sutton's value should shoot up a few spots. But yeah, I mean, I just can't spend a high 6th round pick on someone who just hasn't proven it yet.
No, I think that's fair, especially in redraft, right? Like
Exactly.
Forget people were drafting Justin Jefferson last year, around 12, 13 in redraft? Like
I got him late.
Yeah, and then look what he's done. He put those numbers up. Like people that were drafting Jalen Reagor way earlier than that, they got burned. So like you got to be very careful. Like I would just move on from it. Now, to be fair for Jamar Chase, even his dynasty values is probably the highest is probably going to be for a while. Wide receiver 10 right now is where he's getting drafted. He's getting drafted before Godwin, Allen, DJ Moore, Allen Robinson, Michael Thomas, Terry McLaurin, Amari Cooper, T. Higgins, Brandon Ayuk, Deontay Johnson. Like all those guys are getting drafted after Jamar.
After Terry? That's the most surprising to me is Terry McLaurin. He's still 25 and he's incredible.
Yeah, well, Terry's wide receiver 16 compared to wide receiver 10 for Jamar. His value is shooting to the roof. Like, to be honest, like Jamar is someone who I don't own in any leagues that I didn't have him in Devy. So since I already had him in Devy, I didn't have to draft him super high. But if he's based on where his ADP's at, I wouldn't draft him where he's at. Like, I just don't think it's worth it. No. My dynasty guy I'm staying away from, and I wanted to be a little bit of a different, like not one of these top guys, is Curtis Samuel. So I'm staying away from Curtis Samuel. When you look at where he's going, he's going as a wide receiver 42. I think people are building Curtis Samuel up a little bit too much. I think that they're gonna be targeting Diami Brown from North Carolina is legit wide receiver. Yeah. You have Scary Terry that we talked about. McKissick is there, and then you have Antonio Gibson, Logan Thomas. Like you're gonna have legit guys there that are gonna be getting targets away from him. Where Curtis Samuel is getting drafted, wide receiver 42, not a terrible, but other wide receivers around that, like Terrace Marshall, maybe you might want to take that. Robbie Anderson's going right there. Ooh. Michael Gallup. Tyler Boyd is going there. I'd rather probably have Tyler Boyd, to be honest, in that area. But just in general, in all of those like scenarios, especially like who else kind of James Robinson running back, you have kind of quarterbacks going around there, Ronald Jones. Like, I don't mind Curtis Samuel, but I don't see Curtis Samuel being like a legit fantasy, like wide receiver 3 option. I get worried about that, especially with all the other targets that are there. Are you a Curtis Samuel guy or no?
For me, Kevin, I like the fact that he's going to be used as a running back sometimes. I really like that he's somewhat like he is guaranteed to be manufactured some touches, so that gives him a solid floor, and he also has some explosive upside, and he's only 24. So I mean, all these I would probably take over the guys that you said, especially since like Tyler Boyd is very close for me, like Tyler Boyd or a Curtis Samuel. But with Jamar Chase there and T. Higgins there, Tyler Boyd is now the 3rd option, maybe even the 4th option behind Joe Mixon. So it's very debatable. But do you like the floor that Samuel possesses with his old coach, Ron Rivera, as maybe like a gadget guy who runs the ball, or does that not really appeal to you?
I mean, it kind of does. I mean, the problem I have though is like, are they really going to use Samuel in those roles, or would they use Gibson more? Like, are they going to give more volume to Gibson? Are they going to run the ball more? McKissick's there, with his targets there. Maybe. I like that he's in there, but again, they used Samuel in that role because I don't think they had the weapons that they really needed in there. I mean, they still had CMC and those other guys there, but I still think that I just worry about. And again, I'm not really very high on Fitzpatrick. So I'm not like this guy that thinks Fitzpatrick's going to go in there and win a Super Bowl for the Redskins because of what he is. He's played on 27 different teams. Like there's a reason why he's played in those teams. And like, yeah, he's going to hit the targets, but we also can see them. I can see them with that defense being so good, running the ball a lot, getting Terry the targets that he needs. I think Samuel just might not be able to get the targets. Yeah, he'll have some games, but realistically, I just don't see it. Give me Tyler Boyd and those other guys because I'm a Tyler Boyd guy in a better offense, worse defense situation.
Okay. Yeah. I totally get that, going with the better quarterback, the long-term quarterback in a dynasty with Boyd. Absolutely. Yeah. So I see your argument for sure.
Yeah, so those are our guys. So guys we're staying away from. Justin Jefferson. Well, he's staying away from Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. And in redraft, not Dynasty. And then for me, OBJ, Curtis Samuel, get the hell out of here, especially OBJ. I'm done with you. I'm done with you in Dynasty there. Now, before we leave today, we're going to go over some Dynasty buys.
Yeah.
And I wanted to add this as we go, because as we're getting close to the season, we'll have more to talk about. But right now is a pretty lull period in a lot of leagues. But I think this is a time to kind of get some people. And so I'm going to be throwing out some trades. DLF Trade Analyzer has these for thousands of leagues that they run for MFL. And so this is a good idea if you're in a Dynasty league of some trades going on for some guys that I think you can get for kind of cheap. So I'm going to run through some of them, and then I'll have Jacob tell me what he thinks about the deal. So my first guy that I think is pretty attainable right now is Paris Campbell. Now, I did send out a tweet recently, if you follow me, that I said Paris Campbell is going to be on a Dynasty buy for every single.
I was going to bring that up, Kevin.
Yeah, I know. I've done it, and so I'm making fun of myself here. But this is the last year I have Paris Campbell. Like, this is it for me. Like, this is it. If he doesn't do it, I'm done with him. This is no fifth-year Devontae breakout, Parker breakout year for him. But just for the perspective of the things I saw from him, Paris Campbell's getting traded for Hayden Hurst in a non-tight end premium league. Hurst seems like he's pretty much, I don't want to say done, but the pit's there. He's going to see some targets there. But the value-wise for me, if you hit on Paris Campbell compared to what you hit on Hayden Hurst, especially with the tight end landscape, I'd rather have Paris Campbell. And he's also going for basically a third-round pick. That's his value. So what is your take on Paris? First of all, do you like that trade? Which side would you want? And then what is your overall take on Paris?
Okay, so I do like that trade because, as you said, Hurst, I mean, he might get 3-4 targets a game, but Pitts is going to soak up at least 6, 7, or 8 targets per game. So Hurst is kind of, So trading Hurst away for the upside of Campbell is definitely worth it. Just because last season, Paris Campbell had 9 targets in week 1 before going down. So he has that potential. Now, we do have the Carson Wentz factor, which is a little scary because you just don't know what he's going to be this year. But I would definitely take that upside. Now, for me in a redraft, so I don't know how to say this nicely, but I don't care about Paris Campbell in a redraft league. Like, I'm just like, I'll let someone else draft him, or I'll keep my eye on him on the waivers, and see how he does week 1.
Yeah.
But Paris is not someone I care about in redraft. But if you want to go for upside, and possible that Wentz just loves him, because it can be Paris Campbell, it can be Michael Pittman, it can be T.Y. Hilton. Who is going to be Wentz's guy? We just don't know. And it could be Paris Campbell. So if you want to roll the dice, Paris is a fine option as your last pick, But I love that trade in a dynasty just to get rid of Hurst for upside. Love it.
Yeah, no, I think it's based on value there. I like Paris. I think he can excel that slot role. I think him, Hilton, and Pittman will be there. And I think Wentz being there will help him if Wentz can figure out the demons, whatever's going on with Wentz. Like, I like him. But let's make no mistake about this. Like, Paris is not someone I'm saying going to be a wide receiver 2 or 1. Like, sure, he's a low-end wide receiver 3 for good filler. But I would be more comfortable not starting Hayden Hurst over Paris in a league. So that's kind of how I kind of put that as my perspective.
100%.
All right, my next guy is a guy I'm all in on. This dude is he just needs to stay healthy, kind of like everybody on this list. But Mike Williams from the Chargers. You know what? Just to talk about Mike Williams first, hey, there's no one really outside the top 40 that's already put up wide receiver 1 numbers but Mike Williams. He's already had a 1,000-yard season, 10 touchdowns in a season. He can do it all except for stay healthy. So if he can just stay healthy in terms of kind of what he's been able to do and accomplish in the league, like even last year when he was healthy, he's tied to Herbert as well. So he's tied to someone there. In the games that he really realistically stayed healthy, he put up 27, 21, and 17 points per game in those 3 games that he was out there. He saw targets. He was able to score touchdowns. So I'm a big Mike Williams guy. I'm all in. I think that he's a legitimate wide receiver 3. And he's going to outperform his ADP right now because he's getting drafted after that. So I think he's a legit wide receiver 3 in leagues. And he got traded recently for 2 deals here. Devontae Parker and a 2022 third for Mike Williams. I'm okay with that. And then Mike Williams straight up for Gabriel Davis. So which deal do you like? Are you worried about the Gabe Davis thing? I'm kind of off the Gabe Davis train now, so I wouldn't mind giving him up for Mike Williams.
Yeah, so Gabriel Davis is someone that I am not on the hype train for either. I just think he's just another guy, and he's the 4th option on a Buffalo on a Buffalo Bills team. He does have upside. He's young, but yes, I would trade him for a Mike Williams for sure. And a funny stat about Mike Williams, I know that one year that you talked about that he had 1,000 yards, he only had 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And the year before that, I think he had 10 touchdowns, but only like 600 yards. So if he can find like an equalizer, like let's say like 8 to 900 yards and 6, 7, 8 touchdowns, that is a solid low end wide receiver too. And he can definitely do that. Like you said, he has the Justin Herbert factor. So he has that steady QB, because he was dealing with Phillip Rivers, who is a decent quarterback, but he's more of a check down. He loves to check it down to Austin Eckler and and LT. All these guys. But Herbert, Herbert's arm is on another level. So so I definitely agree that Mike Williams for Devontae Parker and a third, that's a steal, because Parker is now like the second or third option on a Dolphins team with a questionable quarterback in Tua. So now you trade, or in my eyes, you get rid of Parker for a Mike Williams who has a much better quarterback who is set for at least the next 3 years. So I love both those trades.
Yeah, I mean, give me Mike Williams in that scenario. Devontae is okay, but with the upside with Williams, you're looking at 2 wide receiver 3 lower end. Okay, who do you think has the best value? It's gonna be Williams, because even if Williams doesn't resign there, whatever happens after the season, I think that he'll be able to put the numbers up. You can move him. So that's just perspective. Hey, this is where I'm going at, and I agree with you on Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis has this weird following where they think he's gonna be better than he is. Emmanuel Sanders is there now. We just mentioned him. Cole Beasley is there. He's wide receiver 4 on that team. Let's not make this twisted. He is. I think Mike Williams is a good dynasty buy if you're contending. If you're not, but if you're contending, go get him, and then you can use that asset in different ways. I'll be quick on this one. And Zach Moss is not someone I like that much. I like Devin Singletary.
Same.
But Zach Moss is very cheap. So when I was looking at what he was going for, he got traded straight up for Giovanni Bernard. I don't mind that deal because of rushing touchdowns. Maybe Moss will score those. I know some people think that Tom Brady's going to turn Bernard into his PPR guy. I'm really not that on there. Sorry to my other co-host, Jeff Bell. He thinks he is, but he's crazy. And then Zach Moss. Now, this is the interesting one I want to get your opinion on. Zach Moss straight up for Melvin Gordon. Who would you rather have in Dynasty?
That's such a good question, but I would still rather have Moss because he's 23 years old versus Melvin Gordon is 48 years old. So I think that Gordon, this is his last year of relevancy. And even that, I firmly do think that Javonte Williams is going to take over early. So Gordon is kind of like an S, so I would definitely flip him for a 23-year-old, like you said, who has rushing touchdown upside. I can definitely see him getting 5, 6, or 7 rushing touchdowns this year. I can see him also getting, 600 to 700 yards as well. So, he has value, whereas Melvin Gordon may have value throughout the first half of this season, maybe, but Moss at least has 2 to 3 years of rushing touchdown upside.
Yeah, no, I agree. No, I think that's there. I just think I don't like either Singletary or Moss. But what I will say is if you're going to take a shot on one of those guys, I think Moss has the touchdown upside. Singletary would have the PPR upside, but they don't throw the ball to him. So Allen pushes the ball downfield. Singletary's open all the time. I remember. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if I've ever told this story on the podcast, Bo. Last year, I needed a half a point from Singletary in the whole second half of a game.
No way.
To win a game, and he didn't get it because they didn't throw him the ball. I needed a half a point. I needed 0.5 in a PPR, full PPR. I needed 1 catch. He could have -2 yards. All I needed was 1 catch. They didn't throw it to him, and he had 19 yards this game for 2 carries, 19 yards, and no catches, or 1 catch or something like that. So all I needed in the second half was 1 catch from him. He didn't do it. So Singletary is now dead to me. Dead to me.
What a bad beat, bro. I am sorry. That hurts.
That was the worst beat I've had in a long time, besides the Kareem Hunt knocking me out of the playoffs when he went off in that game against the Ravens. All right. But my last guy is a guy that I'm super buying right now because I think he's a hell of a value where he's at, and that's Jacoby Myers from the Patriots. And I think a couple things that we talked about with what Myers was. So last year, Myers totaled 45 yards or more in 9 of his 11 games that he played. So 81% of his games, he had 45 yards or more. From week 7 and on, Myers was the wide receiver 22 in PPR formats. So 12.8 points per game. He averaged 7 targets, 5 receptions, 65 yards. Those are numbers not to overlook. But I know they went out and spent a bunch of money on pass catchers. Aguilar's there. Kendrick Bourne's there. But those numbers, those guys don't really necessarily scare me very much. I mean, Aguilar could, but Bourne is not someone that's going to take away a lot of targets from him. It looks like N'Keal Harry's done. I don't know what's going on with N'Keal Harry. Doesn't think he's going to be there. So Myers could step in, be the wide receiver 1 for the Patriots, and be in the slot. You're getting a wide receiver 1 talent for things like this. So you said his name earlier. Zacchaeus Alamade from Atlanta. I cannot. And a third. Alamadias and Alamadi. Zacchaeus and a third for Jacoby Myers, and then Jacoby Myers straight up for Van Jefferson. You're getting a wide receiver 1 on the Patriots, who I think Mac Jones will start at a certain point and being in the slot for Van Jefferson, basically maybe wide receiver 3, maybe wide receiver 4 on that team. So give me Jacoby all day. I think he's an incredible value right now in Dynasty leagues because you're getting wide receiver 1 in that area.
Right. Yeah. So I was just wondering. Okay, so it's Zacchaeus Olamide. That's how it looks, but yeah. I mean, as you said, it's hard to trade for a team's number 1 wideout, and Myers is their number 1, even with the signing of Aguilar. Yeah. Like you said earlier, Harry is MIA. Like, where is he? And he also just requested a trade too. And it's like, how are they going to trade him away? He was their first round pick, and they would only get pennies back for him. So like, why would they trade him away? But Harry is nowhere to be found. This is Jacoby Myers' wide receiver. I don't want to say team, but like, I mean, like, he is your best bet of getting those tough yards because Cam Newton clung on to him like crazy throughout the season. He didn't get any touchdowns, but in like a PPR, and he's like your wide receiver 4, he did great. So I like that, especially for all those players that he's going for. I mean, Jacoby Myers is basically free. Yeah,
no, he's free wide receiver 1. And what the hell? And especially with Mac Jones coming there, which I think he will, not a bad value. I mean, you can get him really late. I got him in the 16th round, I think, or 15th round of a draft. And I don't mind. I don't hate that, especially for the upside there. Hey, can he put up those numbers some weeks when you have bye weeks? To me, he's a bye week filler, wide receiver 4. Okay, but based on where he's getting, you can still add him in there. So, all right. Well, hey, everybody out there, that's the show for this. We went through our top 5 wide receivers, Dynasty, redraft, hit some news, hit some stay away wide receivers, some Dynasty buys. Jacob, I'm glad everything is going well and everything is there. Did you mention? Did you say his name on air? I can't remember.
His name is Jacob Thomas, but we're gonna call him Tommy Boy. Like to pay homage to my wife's late grandpa, and also the amazing comedy movie starring Chris Farley, Tommy Boy. So I love that.
Fat boy in a little coat. That's my favorite. That's my favorite movie ever. All right. Well, we appreciate you guys listening. Hit that subscribe button. Find us on YouTube, on Triple Play Fantasy YouTube if you're not there already. We'll be back next week. I'm not having a baby, so I'll be here. I think Jacob's done as well for a little while here. Yes. So we will see you guys next week. We appreciate you tuning in.